How's it going, everyone? My name is Bryce, and I am doing an NPC run through Dark Souls. The rules of this run are simple. You have to beat the game as an NPC cosplay. You can pick any NPC you want, but you are only allowed to use that NPC's armor and weapons, and if they're known to have a very certain ring, you have to leave that ring on. Beyond that, though, you can use any other rings you want, you can use any items you want, and you're free to upgrade or enchant your gear, but you're not allowed to turn that gear into any sort of boss weapon. You must stick with the weapon and armor of the NPC. I went with the Crestfallen Warrior for the first run, and this is because he has the longsword and the heater shield, and that is something that the Warrior starting package comes with. So it allowed me to start the game and simply unequip the armor and head through the Undead Asylum with the shield and longsword. So, heading through the asylum, I felt like everything was dangerous. Everything was a problem. I died against the asylum demon the first time, which never happens. I think it was because I'm used to wearing armor. And the world just felt big. It felt scary. I'm not the guy who does challenge runs. I'm the easy mode guide. I like to use that Zweihander. I like to beat things down and throw lightning at it. But now I was faced with a challenge run. So, I got used to the moveset, I got used to rolling and dodging. I eventually made my way through the Undead Burg, and I bought my armor. I was now officially the Crestfallen Warrior. I went over to kill the Taurus demon. I grabbed the gold pine resin along the way, and it was really useful for killing the Taurus demon, though I did miss the first plunging attack, but he died easy enough. I headed back down to Firelink Shrine. I went below deck for the Firekeeper soul, and then I went up to kill the Crestfallen Warrior. That was one of the rules of this challenge, was I decided I had to kill the NPC that I was cosplaying as. I will be breaking this rule for Solaire, however, because I can't resist the urge to be a double Solaire Sunbros. The Crestfallen Warrior was quite a difficult fight. You have to be pretty good to parry him, and he can one-shot you for the most part with his counterattack. So, I went over to a ledge and let him fall off all on his own. All that there was to do then was to head up to the Undead Parish, save Lautrec, summon Lautrec and Solaire, and kill the gargoyle, and I rang my first bell. Then, it was time to go kill Lautrec, and I headed over back to the Undead Asylum to grab the rusted iron ring. I killed Oscar, and then I realized I forgot the key, so I headed back, I grabbed the key, and then I headed back to the Undead Asylum, and I grabbed the rusted iron ring. I went all the way down to Blighttown to kill Quelaag, but first, I had to kill Mildred, and that fight was easy enough. And then I began to fight Quelaag, and I realized I had to learn her movesets. Everything was different with a much smaller and shorter sword, and a lot less damage. So, I tried to let Mildred take the most of the action, but she ended up just walking into lava quite a lot. And I just couldn't beat Quelaag. She would one-hit me, my armor was too weak, my weapon was too weak, and I felt kind of defeated. Could I actually do this run? Did I have what it takes? Am I kidding myself? Who am I to try and do a challenge run? I should just go back to Lightning and the Zweihander and just keep it casual, keep it easy. But then I remembered that when you hit a problem in Dark Souls, you simply back up, level up, and look at it from a different angle. So, I got out of there, and I grinded up my gear with Andre. Then I headed over to grab the Havel ring. And I was a little intimidated by Havel, but you know what? Although he could one-shot us with his big old dragon tooth, he was slow and easy to just walk around in circles and just kind of kill him. It was honestly kind of sad. And that felt amazing. It felt amazing to trivialize Havel, someone who usually gives me so much trouble. I felt like this was the moment that I got good. Now with the Havel ring, I needed to go down and get the large ember for Andre so I could level up my sword even more. So I went down to the Capra, I kept my head on my shoulders, and I killed him pretty easily. I leveled up my sword after giving the large ember to Andre, and then I went back down, and I killed Quelaag this time with better armor, better gear, a little bit of help from Mildred, and just keeping calm, keeping cool, keeping collected. I rang that second bell. And then it was time for a little grocery shopping. I bought the Crest of Astora for later. I headed down to the catacombs because I wanted to get a fire sword before heading back up to go through Sen's fortress and fight Ornstein and Smo. They're weak to fire, so I figured I better have a fire sword first. You know what? In those catacombs, I got my butt kicked. Those skeletons were hard. Those necromancers hit even harder. So I needed a divine sword. If you give a mouse a cookie, right? So I went over to buy some fire bombs from the Undead merchant. I did a few dragon runs to grab the souls easily enough for that. I headed over to the Moonlight Butterfly, and I killed it with a few fire bombs and Beatrice. At this point, I just felt like things seemed dangerous, the world felt big, but it's getting easier than I thought. Havel wasn't a problem, the Capra Demon wasn't a problem, the Moonlight Butterfly wasn't a problem, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. I upgraded my gear with Andre and I went back down to the catacombs, and it was frustrating, it was a maze, but it wasn't that hard. I created a fire sword with Vamos, I went over and killed Pinwheel, and then it was time to run through Sen's fortress. I took a break, I got my wits about me, and I began to make my way through Sen's funhouse. And you know what? Again, it was easy. I stopped to kick Sigmar off a ledge halfway through just because, and then I made it to the top on my first try. Once at the top, I met the Crestfallen merchant, and I grinded quite a few souls to buy all of his gear. I unlocked the shortcut so I could go back down and do some dragon runs. I ended up buying his lightning ring, all of his rings, extra large titanite shards for upgrading my gear even further. At this point, I went over and killed the giant, and that was nothing. It didn't even break a sweat. After the giant, I summoned Black Iron Tarkus, and we killed the golem. Again, first try, no problem. I took the elevator up, I killed a gargoyle, I think I forgot to record that one. Did a rafter run, which was no problem, made it I think on my second try. Killed the gargoyle on the other side, and at this point, I was terrified of Ornstein and Smo. They were looming overhead, but I was feeling hopeful. So, I needed one last thing before fighting them, because fighting them just seemed too difficult, too big. It wasn't doable. So I wanted to grab the large fire ember and get my fire sword up as high as possible before fighting Ornstein and Smo. I headed down and defeated Ceaseless Discharge. I did a suicide run to grab the large fire ember, and then I got my fire longsword up to +8. At this point, I summoned Solaire, and I channeled my inner lemon and used a bunch of fire bombs with Solaire to win on our first try. I was feeling unstoppable. The world was my oyster. There was nothing that could stop me, except for the Four Kings. They were this big idea in my head that I would not be able to pass the DPS check, that it's going to be 5 kings, it's going to be such a difficult fight for me. But I did some shopping. I went around upgrading my gear, I got Oscar's sword, I picked up some fire bombs, some rings, more gear for the future, did some enchanting, put things off just a little bit. I grinded some humanity down amongst the rats to save Solaire, and then it was time to move on. It was time to get back going on the game. I went over to the Fire Sage and we killed him. We killed him easy. He wasn't a problem. Now I just need to kill the Centipede Demon, but Solaire, he was gone. I couldn't find him anywhere. I reloaded the game a few times, I walked around, I tried going back up to the Sunlight Altar, but I could not find Solaire anywhere. I was frustrated. I fought the Centipede Demon a few times, and the whole time I was gritting my teeth. I just wish I had Solaire. I wish I had Solaire. But I learned how to dance. I learned how to move around that Centipede Demon, and you know what? He really wasn't that hard. Maybe Solaire had helped me by backing off and letting me fly solo. After this, I just cheesed the bed of chaos with some fire bombs. I headed down to New Londo. I said hi to Ingward for the key. I drained the lake. I grabbed the very large ember. I grabbed the curse bite ring. And then I went and fought Sif. And I killed the sad puppy. It was easy. I couldn't help but feel at this point, is this it? Is this my first challenge run? Honestly, that last fight wasn't even fun. Speaking of not having fun, it was time to go to Duke's archives. I ran past all the ridiculously overpowered undead, ran my way through the archive, grabbed the first bonfire, and then I just ran in to kill Seath. and the fight was easy. It was nothing. It wasn't even a challenge. But the Tomb of Giants, that would prove a problem, right? So I went down there, and you know what? We went through the darkness, we dealt with the dogs, we killed the Black Knight, and we got to the bonfire. We got to the second bonfire. We killed Leroy for his armor later. And then I just went into the needle fight. I didn't even really prepare for it. I didn't have everything that I was gonna prepare and grab for it, more flat black fire bombs and all that. And Nito at one point glitched up through the wall. I couldn't hit him, so I had to reload the fight, and I didn't even bother to go back and get full Estus. It was just too easy. Is this a joke? I'm going hollow. Is this game even worth playing at this point? It feels like a list of chores. I feel like I've truly become the Crestfallen Warrior. Is this adventure too dull? I wandered around the map for about 2 days. My kids were painting their Warhammer figures, and I was in the room playing with them. I couldn't really record the next challenge, so I used that time to do things that weren't worth recording, grinding and setting up for the next few runs, but I was going hollow. The game was getting repetitive. The hard challenge from the beginning became a grocery list. And where was Solaire? I looked for him everywhere, but he was nowhere to be found, and I felt I was alone without him. I was feeling crestfallen. But I headed into New Londo. I went down to the Four Kings, and I simply walked through that fight. The Four Kings became 5 as my DPS wasn't high enough, just as I had feared. I wasn't fast enough, but the fight was no problem. Is this it? Is this all Dark Souls can throw at me? With nothing left to do, I headed down to the Lord Vessel. I placed the souls and ran through the Black Knights, and sidestepping the Black Knights was easy. Simply hung to the right, kind of walked behind them as they hit, and then just ran through. I looked for Solaire, and sure enough, he wasn't there. Instead of going back and trying to resummon him and do everything, I decided it was time to be done. It was time to wrap up this game. So I went in to fight Lord Gwyn, and it took a few tries as usual, but eventually Gwyn went down. I answered the question, can you beat the game as the Crestfallen Warrior? Yes, easily. But the real danger isn't all the terrors of the world. It's apathy. I honestly almost went hollow on this run. Few days of just walking through a world where nothing was a challenge anymore. The excitement, it was gone. But I remembered. Another game's on the horizon. A new hero to play in New Game Plus as Oscar of Astora. And on this run, I'm going to help everyone, just like Oscar helps me. I'm going to truly embody him. If you enjoyed hearing this short 10-minute run through of what was honestly about a week worth of playing the game, I'm going to upload a longer version of this run where you can hang out with me for about 2 hours as I take a mostly unedited. I do cut out quite a few, and there's some things I didn't record that were boring, but mostly unedited walkthrough of my NPC playthrough as the Crestfallen Warrior. I hope you guys will join me on that journey, and I hope you'll tune in for our New Game Plus run as Can You Beat the Game as Oscar from Astora. That one should prove to be a little bit more challenging because I can't swap out my longswords like I could on this run, and although I'll have slightly better gear, I do expect that longsword of Astora to cause quite a few problems for me along the way. There's only one way to find out though. I gotta start playing. I'll see you guys on the next one.